for joining. And welcome to our event tonight. This is the final event of the Festival of Better Ideas, which started officially, I think it was the 15th of July. We opened our show, the RCA 2020 show. And since that day, every day, we've had an amazing series of events. Thousands of people have been checking in and following the work of our students and the work of the amazing speakers who come and talk to us. We started off with the VIP show on that Wednesday. We went through to the Thursday Visible Impact Seminar with Lou Down, with Andrea Cooper from Visa, and Ellie Runcie, Head of Design at the BBC, and we talked about the visible impact of design. We then showcased our financial services, our healthcare, our urban living, our human condition, and 6 showcases of the students' work every night with an inspirational, amazing speaker. And literally thousands of people have come and joined us, and I'm incredibly grateful for everyone who has. This is it. This is the end of the line of this amazing 2.5 weeks Festival of Better Ideas. A bit of an audacious title, but if we are not here to have better ideas, then what are we here for? And I think we've seen a lot of better ideas right across the board. This purpose, the purpose of this 2.5 week event, series of events, festival, has really been the work of the students, of course, in this year, this cohort, the class of 2020. And this is the first year the RCA have had to put the whole show online. No physical show, no warm Prosecco, as I like to mention every time, that we get so used to every year. Usually one of the finest days of the year, packed full of people, no longer in this current crazy times. So all online it went, and an incredible showcase, RCA 2020, 850 students from fashion and fine art and design products through to service design. And you can find it by going to RCA 2020 and going to menu and finding the School of Design, and in the School of Design you'll find service design. Not the greatest piece of user experience, but it's there along with incredible work right across the college. Just to help everybody, we created our own website, which is rcaservicedesign.com. And on that site you can find all the work that's actually organized according to the projects of the students, and you'll see them split into the 6 themes that we've been showcasing on every night of this whole festival. So there you will find examples of urban living, Project Lot, which takes unloved bits of land and turns them into food growth in inner cities. Across silos, looking at how to help Barking and Dagenham, working with data scientists and behavioural scientists with service design to join up the authorities, join up the expertise and make sure nobody falls through the gaps, preventing vulnerable people. What else have we got? Climate 101 puts climate content education into every university course in the country, not just science and engineering, but history and English too. We have projects on green investments. We have projects on the supply chain of fashion. We have projects that encourage us to walk to work and reward us for doing so. We have projects working with the fire brigade to prevent terrible catastrophes such as the fires we've had and post-Grenfell, and how to stay healthy in a pandemic. Every single project is an amazing story. We're working with storytellers and writers to help us tell those stories. We don't have chairs or dresses like the rest of the college. We just have this intangible stuff that we tell stories about that, despite its intangibility, has amazing impact. So when I arrived at the course, I think I might have forgotten to say I'm Clive Grinyer. I hope you know that by now. The still fairly new head of service design, replacing Nick de Leon, who started the course 8 years ago. When I came, I invited the students and the staff to talk to me about what was the ethos of this course and what should it be going forward. And we came up with some words, and we turned those words into these little diagrams, these little icons. And you couldn't be a service designer if you weren't curious, if you weren't courageous with what you found through your curiosity, and you weren't collaborative in how you deliver that, how you work with everyone to make a change. We want the students, and they are dynamic, they're innovative, and they're here to transform. They're not here to just leave the world as it was. They want to make it better. And they want to make it better for people. They're incredibly human-centric, and they're increasingly planet-centric. They're realizing that our role in this system that we live in is not always at the center. We're part of a total ecosystem of atmosphere and animal and planet and mineral. And they have incredible purpose. Every single one of those projects, you will be amazed at the passion and purpose that they show. And I'm delighted to say that after 2.5 weeks of banging the drum for service design, our students are getting fantastic jobs. They're going to get out there in the world and change it a little bit or even a lot. Which is the perfect segue for my guest tonight. The grand finale, as we pompously call it, this last event of our Festival of Better Ideas, is really just a lovely excuse for me to talk to somebody I've known for a long time. I count as a dear friend, but also an inspiration. A little bit about Andrea, if you didn't know that much already. She has just changed jobs, and she's now Service Director for Adult Social Care Modernisation in Cornwall, an authority she has worked for before. But she is perhaps, and I hope she won't blame me for saying this, but she's perhaps most famous for the job she has most recently left, which was the founder and I think officially deputy director of the UK Government Policy Innovation Unit, which included the Policy Lab and the Open Innovation team. And we'll talk to her all about that and the lovely Sky Rooms where everyone does their stuff. She's an academic. She got a first class honours and she has a master's and a PhD. I'd love her to talk about that. She worked with the Design Council, and was when I first met her, was when she came to be interviewed in 2001, and then became the first Chief Design Officer, replacing the Director of Design, which was the job I'd had at the Design Council. She went on to work in Cornwall at Designs at the time, and then with the local government directly, and I remember working with her there. She worked with Innovate UK and Unilever and Channel 4, all of this before joining the Policy Lab. She's been a TEDx speaker, and she speaks everywhere around the world, including at Google at Stanford. I am particularly proud when I was at the RCRSA, the Royal Society of Arts, that they very sensibly awarded her the Bicentenary Medal, and became just the 10th female in its history to do that. And last year, she was listed by Apolitical, the rather lovely website and communication tool, one of the world's most influential public sector innovators. Before I just start with Andrea, I just want to say that for me, she is a hero. I think a hero is somebody that charts uncharted territory, and in doing so leaves a wake behind them that ripples and causes waves, and people follow in that wake. And I think Andrea is exactly that. She once said to me, if you really want to know if something is valued or not, you only really know until you take it away. And I think if you took Andrea away, then an awful lot of stuff would not have happened. So it's my huge delight to end this whole festival and begin this chat with Andrea. I shall stop sharing and introduce Andrea Cooper to you all. Hello, Andrea, how are you?
Hi, Clive. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, no doubt.
Not just because I had a birthday yesterday. I'm exhausted because of this amazing festival. I think we've invented something between the One Show and the Hay Festival for service design. We're going to have to keep doing it every year. So anyway, but it's lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining. And you're somewhere crazy like Lincolnshire or somewhere like that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Lincolnshire. So I found the only wall that hasn't got tints on it. So I'm against a white wall here. But you may hear the clock. The clock in my parents' kitchen, it plays birdsong at the half hour and the hour. So depending on how we go, you might hear, I don't know, a cuckoo, or you could get a starling. I'm not sure.
Fantastic, fantastic. As you see, I've perfectly arranged my design background, so
I'm very impressed.
you're getting the full Tim Brown one here. It's great to see you. We want to hear from you. And if you don't mind, I'd love to take you right back, because I know you ended up studying, you just studied industrial design at Newcastle, I think with Jonathan Ive, didn't you?
Yeah, so Johnny was a couple of years older than me, but I did the same course, the industrial design course there, yeah.
And what took you there? What was your epiphany about design, and what did you expect it was going to be like when you even decided?
Gosh, now we're casting minds back. So probably 30 years ago, I had an incredible design technology teacher, Stephanie Atkinson, who is now professor at Sunderland. And she was amazing and really inspired me. And I remember doing my GCSEs, and I entered my GCSE project to the Design Council for the Student Design Prize. And lo and behold, I got shortlisted. So I went to London and had a journalist come up to my school and interview me. And I designed some like urban furniture, street furniture. And I'd had it built. My head teacher was amazing, and he said, like, we can build this if you've got the design. So I felt like people really believed in me, even when I was, 15, 16 years old. And the journalist from the Design Council who came, he said, you should be an architect. And I said to him, no, I want to be an industrial designer. And the reason for that was that I'd been to Leicester, and I saw David Carter speak. Wow. And David Carter of DCA, and he talked about how industrial designers got to design everything from trains to the Stanley knife, and how he had this funny client meeting in, I think, Hong Kong or somewhere, where his client said to him, this design you've come up for the Hong Kong Light Railway can't be admitted because you might be able to cut the seats with the Stanley knife. And he said it was his whole career coming back to haunt him, because of course he designed the Stanley knife. So I saw him in a kind of chilly little hall and late one winter's evening, and it just blew me away, because for me it was the art of the possible, and it was about the excitement of engineering and design and technology and bringing all of those to human needs. So I was sold right back then. And so I looked up what was the hardest place to study undergraduate industrial design, and I found Newcastle, and I went on an open day, and they said to me, you really don't want to come on this course, it's really hard. And that I was sold. And so yeah, I undertook the 4-year grueling course and loved every minute.
Fantastic. So I think that sort of product design, industrial design training has sort of stayed with you through everything, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the thing about industrial design is that you can zoom into the micro. If you look at the work Johnny does now, the absolute micro detail, and then you can zoom out to the whole system. And, perhaps a bit of me would have liked to be an architect, but I just love the variety that industrial design brings, and the way that you have to have that sympathy for the small as well as the big.
So what was your final showpiece at Newcastle? I don't think I ever saw it.
So I designed 2 things. In Northumbria, we used to always have a motto: you should design for industry, and then also design something to change industry. So my design for industry project was actually a cash till for a cashless society. And it was designed to be a really elegant piece of design, so that rather than it being a piece of kind of office equipment, when you went into a shop, the experience of spending money would be one of the highlights. And so I spent probably about 3 weeks. I got a solid block of aluminium, put it on a lathe, and I turned it into this incredibly shiny elliptical shape that you could swipe a card through, or at that time the smart cards were coming in. It was before contactless. So it was all about making it theatre, so that the shopping experience would be theatrical, not a kind of process that you have to go through. And then I rang the bank and I said to them, what we really need to do is design the service behind this. So I rang Finsbury Square, NatWest, and I said to them, what if we abolished the way that we do like transactions now and created something called receipt.co? They would capture all your data over a year. and they would give you analytics back on your spending. And, you know, bearing in mind this is 1994, 95, they then wrote back saying, this is a really great idea, we wish we had it, or words to that effect. So for me, it was the sort of inception of a bit of service design, but also understanding that a lot of service design is physical touch points.
Yes, that's interesting. We're still not there yet. In fact, we still seem to be moving further and further away from the kind of affordance that we often look for in a product. I'm obsessed with affordance at the moment, and touching the invisible of AI and blockchain and things like that. Anyway, that's another conversation. What amazing visionary project. I didn't realize you were going to say something so so incredible. Okay.
It was great fun. It was with Delarue. They were a sponsor as well. So having a real world client was incredible. And I took it up to show them afterwards. And they literally wrote down patent by patent all the things they thought they could take from my design.
Fantastic. Yes, we all learn about IP quickly when we're students. Okay, so you left well, it's Northumberland, as you rightly called it, and you went into, you did end up teaching on that course, but you did something in between, didn't you? You were a consultant, is that right?
Yeah, so I worked at Octo, and I started working when I was still in my final year, and they brought me in on a project to design air fresheners. And I remember doing 100 air fresheners in an afternoon, and it was just shapes. And I remember them saying, well, we need a girl because these air fresheners are bought by women, and therefore we need to tell our client that we will, I hope they don't mind, the time has moved on. We want to tell our client that we have a woman working on this, and therefore she would intuitively understand what women want in air fresheners. Wow. Anyway, as it turned out, I didn't. And I just did these shapes, and I remember in that moment thinking, I've spent 4 years, surely design can be about more than just shapes. And there were people on my course who were really good at shapes, and I admire that in the way that you would admire fine sculpture. But for me, I felt that it was about innovation, it was about changing the world, and I just thought, what if we take this methodology of design and we apply it to the stuff that matters? So yeah, we could have more air fresheners, and frankly, we could have more mobile phones and everything else. But what if we turned this toolkit to social problems, like the number of people in prisons or childhood, early learning? And so for me, that was seeded, if you like, this thought about design needs to be about more than just consumer products. It can really help society. And that then led me on a kind of lifelong quest to do that.
So you were teaching on the course there, you became an academic, and you got I can't remember when you got your PhD. Was it when you were at Northumbria?
Yeah, so I did a PhD in virtual reality with BT at Astral Park in Martlesham Heath. And that was about designing virtual reality with a designer's sympathetic understanding of the 3D world. Back then, it was just technologists driving virtual reality, and it was all clip art. So you would clip art a table into a virtual world. And I was much more interested in the art of the possible of virtual worlds. Like, what if we made a virtual reality space that, instead of replicating all the failures that we see in the real world, did something very magical and different? So I designed and worked on a number of things, dealing desk of the future at BT, where we designed stock exchange as though it was a field of corn. And when you traded, it was like the wind rippling through the field. We did 3D retail before, pretty much as the internet was emerging, so it was quite early, but that was VR 3D retail. And then also looking at training for bankers and things like that. So it was all quite interesting, but it was all struggling with the metaphor of, how do you really interact in a new, fresh way in virtual reality? Amazing,
amazing. Okay, so I'm going to sort of fast forward to you coming to the Design Council now, if that's okay. And I remember you walking in, and I was just blown away by how intelligent you were talking about design. And you joined at that point, and you were I think you headed the research side of the Design Council, weren't you? Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about what that felt like. You came down to London. Was that the first time in London?
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, I'd been teaching contemporary influences on design as well as design practice, so sort of all the theory of design. And I think I taught about 45 lectures in a year. It was like writing a dissertation a week, and then doing almost because I was only sort of 24 maybe when I started as a senior lecturer. So I was teaching people who were the year below me. which much to their, they thought it was hilarious, and often joked with me. So I remember we sat down and we looked at the list of things that I was lecturing, and the list of things that you wanted to, the Design Council to be world leading on and develop. And they kind of matched. And it was like this amazing moment of thinking, well, you know, this was just a perfect fit. And I loved teaching, and I loved most of all seeing amazing students going out in the world. I taught Matt McGrath, who then set up a medical instrument company, Rob, who did Trunky, Pete Joseph, whose brothers are Joseph and Joseph designers. So like to see these incredible designers in the world gave me so much joy. But then I also felt that I just kept redesigning the curriculum every year. And I was a terrible teacher because I just wanted to innovate and be creative with the course. And actually, I think the job was to just repeat the stuff. So for me, I felt that I needed.
You mean I've got to keep doing the same stuff?
Well, I mean, I ran all the industry collaborations as well, and that brought something really fresh. So we back then worked with Nokia, and we worked with Johnny Ive, Land Rover, and others. So I think you can make a course very, very relevant. But there is something about the structure of not getting too far ahead of your of where you should be teaching. So yeah, no, Design Council is incredible, and it was amazing to be in London, city lights, leaving Newcastle, a town I was really fond of. But yeah, living in Covent Garden, about a minute away from the office.
Amazing, amazing. One of the things I remember most fondly was the Design Futures events you set up. Perhaps you'd tell us a little bit about that. I thought we should do it again.
Yeah, it was great because I mean we sort of developed all this knowledge and we had it online, but it seemed to me that knowledge alone, or not even knowledge in a book. I mean, I've written chapters in books, and anyone who reads books will know that by the time a book has gone through a process of publishing, most books are kind of out of date by the time they're in print. And so for me, it was all about bringing to life.
There you go.
Bring to life that knowledge. Did you lose me there for a second?
Just for a second.
I think my power is running low, so let me just plug in.
Yeah, sure, you're allowed to do that. Just don't show us any chints.
I know, you're going to get the full works. Let me try and plug it into this machine, see if that works. It was plugged in, but the machine obviously wasn't charging. See if that works. So it was about bringing that knowledge to life and just getting everyone in the room, because I remember someone saying to me at the RCA, you only have to be 1 week ahead of the students, and the kind of cutting edge practice that happens, it happens between people and networks. And so London is a hotbed of talent, and it was about seizing all of that connectivity and getting everyone in the room. And yeah, they were amazing fun.
No, it was a great, and as you rightly said, we were actually building knowledge for the website, because the Design Council, I think I was the first designer that had ever been at the Design Council, and you were kind of the second or something. And it was quite interesting actually teaching the Design Council and the world about design. They were great days. But as you and I agreed, we're not going to talk about my leaving party. So yes, after that, I mean, you went off to Australia, didn't you? And you did, tell us a little bit about those in-between years before you came back and formed the Policy Lab. Yeah,
so I was at Design Council for quite a while, and I set up the Design Challenges teams. And so that was about really bringing design to these new issues. And the Home Secretary had been interested in how you design out crime. And so we kickstarted a new multi-million-pound project in that area. And then I also worked on designing out bugs, which was to reduce infections in hospitals, and set up that. And that was an incredible collaboration, again, with Helen Hamlin Centre at the RCA and with the Design Business Association. And in 9 months, we developed 10 brand new products for the NHS that were about reducing deaths from infections. And of course, that was like 13 years ago now. But had we not done that then, COVID would have been, we reduced deaths from 4,500 a year down to about 500 a year. So there was a massive campaign then, but no one knew COVID was coming. So now if you go into the NHS, you will see, and no doubt in many of the hospitals, the equipment that was designed by the RCA and by the Design Council, working with manufacturers and working with designers. And it was done so rapidly. It was brilliant. And so we did that, and we set up the Public Services by Design programme, which I think now is more than 70 local authorities now use that. And these were all campaigns that came from a single post-it note. And I love, if I'm honest, that moment when you write something on a post-it note and you have no idea if it's going to be a thing or not. And then you put it on a wall, and I always in my mind log those moments. And, you know, more often than not, you look back 5-10 years later and you realise from that single note came some incredible outcomes. And so there were so many of those. They were amazing. And so I really cherished my time at Design Council. I went to Australia, finished writing up the PhD while I was there, and then actually came back to Design Council, I think, briefly before then going to run the Design Council's programme in Cornwall.
Ah, yes. So that was your first time down in Cornwall, and that was the Design of the Times. Tell us a little bit about the idea, the objective of that programme.
So Design of the Time was fantastic. I mean, I've watched with admiration from afar. Jill Hicks had set up this programme with Ruth Hasnett, and they had worked with John Thacker in the North East. And in the North East, they'd been using design in a really fresh way, helping citizens be on the front foot of change and connecting what citizens cared about with designers to start to develop that. And they really nurtured emerging design talent, like Think Public and working with LiveWork, working with Engine. And for me, I think that was the first national programme that really underlined the importance of service and social design. So that was in the North East. And I'd been up there and I went to the conference and so forth, and I was really impressed. It was a big programme, and it was designed to be a biennial event. The second one was in Cornwall, and I was supposed to be on the interview panel if I'm candid on this. And when I saw the job description, I just thought, I have to do this. This is just so me. I really want to do this. So I rang up the Design Council, said, look, I don't want to be on the panel. I actually want to be an applicant. And then it was only when I got to the interview that I realised I hadn't really fully thought it through, because, of course, if I didn't get the job, I was sort of interviewing my current employer, and it all looked a bit speculative. So I was quite relieved to get the job. That was amazing, and said I would move to Cornwall because I really wanted to be immersed in it. I didn't want to be someone who looked at the problem from afar. And so for me, it was really, really important to be on the ground and with people, designing with them and not designing things for them or doing things to them. And again, this sort of spirit of co-design, and then tapping into the ingenuity of local people. I'd learned that from working with the police on the Designing Out Crime. The police were the most creative people in the room, which really surprised me. But then when you think about it, they have to solve all sorts of problems. So they were incredible. And I found that same ingenuity and resilience and creativity in abundance with the communities in Cornwall we were working with. And so I was really pleased to then take that programme forwards.
It was an amazing programme. I remember it coming down a couple of times to the Eden Centre, Eden Project and things like that. You had amazing events. What do you think the legacy of it was? Did you think it changed things? Is the impact still there in Cornwall, or does it need to be done again?
So it's a really good question, actually. I mean, there was a massive evaluation report, and I remember studying it on the table, and the chief exec, who was a real visionary chief executive, said, I really love this programme. I think it gave him a real world sense of what was going on. He actually asked for board meetings to be longer. We had, I think, 3-hour board meetings. He said, can they be 5-hour board meetings? And I think for someone who spent a lot of time in boards, that was quite a good test. But he looked at the evaluation report and he said, look, I believe in this. I want you to bring it into the whole council and take what you've done on small scale with 10 or 15 projects and apply it to our £1.6 billion organisation. And so it was really his vision that drew me into becoming then the first chief design officer in a local authority. And so some of the legacy went in that way, but actually I was surprised to see how much came just from the programme itself. So Falmouth University have continued to go from strength to strength. Their Academy of Research came from that. Design agencies who were tiny then kind of took on more staff and built up their practice. Some pivoted hugely and went from being one thing to being something completely different. And I think I met someone probably about 8 or 9 years afterwards, and she said the problem with that program is it was too far ahead of its time, and we've only just realized how important it was. And it's sort of, I think one of the downsides perhaps was it took probably longer to sink in. But that said, I mean, you'll know from discussions we've had about the double diamond and things like that. Double diamond was another one which was, written on a post-it note, and you look at it at the time and you think, well, I remember Chris Vanstone showing me it and just thinking, well, that could be something, maybe, or maybe not. And then and then time kind of takes things forward. So
having dinner with him, probably the last time I went out to dinner, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep pushing you on because we want to get to the heavy stuff, the good stuff. I know you did some other stuff between then, but let's get towards the policy lab now. How on earth did you hear about that? How were you approached about that, and what was your remit at that time?
So I think because I was living in Cornwall and working out of Cornwall, I wasn't really frequenting places where you would hear about this kind of job. So it had somewhat passed me by, and then I was at an event at the RSA and someone said to me, oh, there's a job going in government, and I hadn't heard of it. So I said, oh, what's that? And she explained, and I thought, I could do that, that'd be fun. And then she said, oh, the problem is the deadline is like, I think tomorrow or something like this. So it turned out the deadline was the Monday, and this was, I think, the Thursday night. So she sent me it over. I lost a weekend in preparing, and I think I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I thought I was just going to apply for another design job, and frankly, I didn't realise how hard it is to work in government, and how high they set the bar for entry. And so even though I had a PhD, and even though I had, lots of experience, I think it was still a challenging role to walk into. And so, yeah, about several months later, they offered the job, and I said, I will start in 3 days and we'll just get started, roll up my sleeves.
Wow. And there you were commuting from Cornwall. Yes.
So found myself in reverse, really, suddenly back in London, but living in Cornwall. And actually, that's always brought me a really, I think, useful context of not getting into the Whitehall bubble,
Right.
Where there is naturally the tendency towards a little bit more groupthink or London think. I really felt that when I would be in Cornwall, I would have an incredibly different perspective to that which I would see in London. And I really loved playing those two off against each other as a very kind of rich tapestry for thinking about policy.
So let's look at the policy lab. You came in at a time of a coalition government, I think I'm right. It was an interesting time, and obviously design, I think it was design or innovation or something was on people's minds, otherwise they wouldn't have set this up. Talk to us about those heady first days and how you built the team, and of course you had 2 teams with the Open Innovation team as well.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I should also say that I'm still, I'm on a career break from the Cabinet Office. So I'm still bound by the Civil Service Code, and as a civil servant, it's really important that you're objective and that you're not, you don't have a political viewpoint. And I actually, during my time at the Policy Lab, served under 3 prime ministers, or 4, I guess, if you count the Deputy Prime Minister when it was the coalition. So it's been really interesting to see how design would play out in that political context. I really wanted to get into policy because I felt that when I worked at Design Council, we were coming up with really fresh new ideas that could change the world. But for whatever reason, they weren't getting traction because they were coming from outside the system. And so it felt to me that if you wanted to kind of change the world, getting as near as you can to the start of an idea, the beginning of a policy, would be a really effective way to do that, and to, again, bring this methodology of design to the things that matter. And the way that policy is developed matters to us as citizens and as countries. And so bring that toolkit into early stage policy making was really exciting. And we had a year. At the very opening event, our permanent secretary said, if this is not a success in a year, we'll shut it down in front of all of our stakeholders. Which provided a really helpful, actually, burning platform or your feet to the fire moments, because we just didn't sit around wondering or strategizing. We literally rolled our sleeves up and got going. And I think in a very designerly way, got practical, demonstrated what good looked like, rather than talking. We just started doing. And as I say, started working with the police on day 3. And so there were many, many projects. In fact, I think over 104 projects were delivered in 6 years. Everything from space security to social housing, post-Grenfell, working on manual for streets, so the shape of and layout of roads, through to the maritime autonomy regulatory environment in a post-AI world. So it was super, super exciting. And, you know, it was like the dream consultancy where you're designing things that at university you would never imagine you would get your hands on, and bringing these new techniques like speculative design, service design, to bear on these important national and international challenges. So,
and did people come running to your door straight away? Did they get it? You know, what do you think was the appeal of it?
So I think we kept it relatively under the radar to begin with. We didn't really go out with a big fanfare. We didn't overpromise, but there was a call across government to say who has a project that you can't solve that you think
Right.
the lab might be able to help with. And I think one team quite early on coined us as the Ghostbusters. Like, if you've got a problem no one else can solve, go to Policy Lab.
Yeah.
And so we kind of prided ourselves on bringing something that teams didn't already have. And we didn't really have a view as to what that might be. So, for example, you know, we knew design, of course, but if design wasn't the answer, we wouldn't necessarily force the issue. And on some of the projects, it was about bringing data science. Some of them were more digital, some of them new ways of looking at analytics. So it really varied in the lab. The lab was kind of a blank canvas on which to try out new things.
I know you did some great things, like find an attic room and turn it into a space for innovation. The sky room, I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, they had filmed James Bond in our building, in the Treasury building. And so we had this tower, there are 6 of them, overlook Big Ben. And because it has a spiral staircase and less inclusive, they weren't being used quite so frequently. And so we offered to prototype what would an innovation space look like. And I worked with Rupert, who was in the Cabinet Office, and I worked with Jeremy Myerson, and I worked with IDEO on this. And we did it as a collaboration to really dream big about what might we use that innovation space for. And then having prototyped it, it was fantastic because the Treasury were then convinced, and then they built a second one on the ground floor, which is now fully accessible. It was just amazing, and that has continued. It's one of these things where you start something and someone else continues it. So Kirsty Groves, also RCA, did a huge amount of work on the new second Sky Room. And I think there's a network now developing across government of these spaces.
That's amazing. And what, I mean, it's answering the question itself really, but obviously that's giving people something they don't get in their normal environment. And presumably I've seen you in action, you're doing things to make them think differently. What do you think what are the ingredients of success in what you did or still doing?
Ooh, so we sort of created a bubble, which was always fun because I never thought space was the answer to innovation. And I don't like the idea that you ghettoize design or innovation as a bit of, you know, as an add-on. And so I've always felt that design at its best is kind of the living, breathing heart of an organization. And that therefore everyone in it, just like the heart is connected to every part of an organization, everyone should be part of your design mission. And so that was true when I was at Design Council, and it was also true at the lab. And so space was useful, but actually you can create that bubble anywhere. And so we often would be given quite elaborate rooms, actually. The Locarno rooms, which are very, very decorative in the Foreign Office. We ran one of our first workshops, and we would just say, this is the lab now. And so what was different, I think, what the bubble was a series of principles and ways of looking at the world. And as you said at the start, you know, that kind of collaborative curiosity and creativity that is the seed of all new things, and the sort of sense of what is behind our sense of purpose and progress. So you could literally magic this bubble any way you liked. And so we would, and we spent most of our time in the lab out and about around the country, in Bradford, in, you know, Penzance in Cornwall, helping local industrial strategies. And we would magic the bubble wherever we needed it, which was quite low cost, in fact, for government.
Talk to, that's interesting, true. I guess that helps it being attractive. You had some amazing people go through Policy Lab. I'd love to know more about, you know, some of those people and how they were attracted and what they did when they were there.
Yeah, so I've always said that the lab is product of people in it. And I think that's true of any creative studio, any team, in fact. So my mantra for leadership is, you know, hire good people and then get out of the way. It's probably a little bit more than that. It probably also is creating the space and permission for them to be their best. And another favorite I think I have is, like, you know, just ask people to do what they've always wanted to do. So I was always really careful when we would encourage and recruit and second people into the lab to spend some early time with them, helping them decide what was their mission, and not impose that on them. And so in the lab we would have, you know, an artist in residence who was passionate about bringing art and science to policy. Have an ethnomusicologist, an ethnographer who does video. And so each of those individuals pursues their passion. And then when you take those together, it does become a kind of dream team. And I've always felt that chemistry and that sense of individual and collective passion fuels what is actually quite difficult. New ideas can be quite difficult. They need nurturing. It's not easy, or else everyone would do it. So you do need a sense of camaraderie. You need people to have this kind of creative shared endeavour. And I think the lab just oozes that and continues to today, because they're just amazing people.
Yes, and of course it carries on. Vasant Chari now running it, and amazing people. Sanjan has come and talked to our students, and Becky, of course, an alumni, a recent alumni from the RCA. There have been lots of other design labs, policy labs, of course, and you weren't the first. There was Denmark, a Christian, and sometimes they stay around, and sometimes they disappear. And we've got students from China and Japan on our course who are coming to the RCA to study how to set up a policy lab. Amazing. And obviously, you know, Nicholas as well, one of our tutors. What advice would you give to people who want to develop an effective and sustainable policy lab?
So I think that I've always said that if the world stands still, you wouldn't need a lab. Okay, so and right now we have quite a lot of change. So sometimes you have to pick your problems. Other times your problems will pick you. But I think the crucial and first ingredient of any successful lab or creative practice is moving with the edge and finding where that edge is. And for different organisations, that edge is in a different place. So for us in government, different departments will be on their own journey, some more advanced than others. And so we always spend a lot of time tuning into where they're at to help them develop their practice. So I think that's really important in, you know, not getting too faddy, you know, not getting technology led around, well, you know, blockchain is the answer to everything, or even design is the answer to everything. So I think we've always been keen to make a difference, but pretty agnostic about what tools we might deploy. And so we're quite happy to hybridize different methodologies and ways of working. So number one would be to always be at the pushing the boundaries of practice. I'd say number two, operate at the coalface. Don't be a kind of nice to have. Really target the stuff that matters, and bring people into that endeavour, because if it really matters, someone's already on it. And too often I think innovation teams are put on nice to have projects or vanity projects or innovation theatre. I've always been keen that even if it doesn't, you know, I mean, some of the projects that we worked on were not obvious as an innovation practice and yet have turned out to be the most innovative work. So doing that, and I think probably the third one is just like have, you know, give people the space to be creative. And by that I mean, you know, apparently in America they say about 30% of people's time in the workplace is spent looking for their next job. I think I've seen a study equivalent to that. So if you accept that, you know, people are willing to move, why not just give them that 30%? Whether you call it Google time or whatever you call it, turn R&D into the day job. so that everyone is on their own personal quest to develop their own practice and to further enhance the practice of the organisation. And it just pays back massive dividends in energy, in passion, in impact. And of course, you know, more than anything, you're only as good as your last project. You're only as good as the impact that you deliver in the world, the change that is successful. And that's never obvious. I mean, you'll know that from a zillion projects. It's never obvious at the beginning which projects are going to be wildly successful and which aren't. And therefore, you have to do this innovation spread betting. You have to do a number of projects on the understanding that a few of those will really go big. And you'll learn a lot from all the rest.
Yes, it's true. I mean, every word you said completely maps onto all aspects of service design, whether it's in commerce. When I was working with you, I just left, you know, a big bank, and big banks and governments look pretty similar, actually. There was all the same barriers and different obstacles in the way. But of all the projects you've done, what would you say, you know, what's your standout? What's the one you either enjoyed or had the biggest impact or you really feel proud of?
Within the lab or in life?
What's within the lab, yeah, but then you can do life. I
can do life as well. I get 2 projects. Gosh, there were so many. Let me pick one. I think probably I feel bad even saying one, because it's like having favourite children, right? You can't have favourite projects. I do think that the work we did on maritime autonomy was super exciting. And the reason for that was that we were looking at the regulatory environment of the ocean and understanding that these new technologies like artificial intelligence, autonomy were coming along, and people knew what that had, you know, people understood what that meant when it came to autonomous vehicles on the roads. But what did it mean in the sea? And the team did the most phenomenal work on speculative design. And Nina, in particular, as our first speculative designer in government, designed flags from the future. And she brought her craft as a fashion designer into policy. And so we were designing a regulatory environment, but she created this exhibition called Signals, which were flags from the future. And those flags represented the kinds of, because normally if you're on a boat, you use a flag to signal between boats. And so she had some amazing flags. They were all speculative, but one of them was hoisted by a boat when their AI was broken and they needed human help. So it was this beautiful poetic touch point, if you like, from the future about what happens when you trust so much to an AI system and it can't cope, and how might we sort of layer that with the human knowledge of how we've done things in the past. That was one of many, and that work has just gone on from strength to strength, and that team were incredible. We had the ministers, we had the Secretary of State, we ran workshops, we got everyone together, from the insurers to the manufacturers, the entrepreneurs, the lot. And it really showed me, if you want to do something bold, you have to do it together.
That's a great line. Right. It's so fascinating. I mean, who would have thought you'd have a speculative designer in the policy lab working with the marine industry and everything else? It was extraordinary. I must admit, we've got very passionate about speculative design in service design. There's a great project on the website called Ray about speculative design in sleep. Go and check it out. But then I'm going to allow you to come up with your best project in all of life now.
In all of life. Yeah, look, I mean, I think I still will. I learned so much and valued so much the work we did in hospitals, because I think the thing that struck me about hospitals is that when you do research in a hospital, we did ethnography in a number of hospitals and then trialed in 10 hospitals across the country. The standard of evidence is so high, because of course, if you get it wrong, then people's lives are at risk. And yet we were able to demonstrate that with good design and with actually great collaboration, again, we had the chief nurse, we had microbiologists, we had scientists, we had designers all working together to reduce this transmission of infectious disease. And I genuinely think that work was led by an incredible civil servant, but our ability to bring something new was really special, but not just the idea, because ideas are easy, right? I think even Papanek said that ideas are free, give them away. It's to deliver it, it's to make it happen. And I think that's the magic of design that we don't always dwell on, which is the deliverability, that design brings something new, but it also brings it into the world in a fresh way. And so to see 10 brand new products come into being in 9 months from a standing start, only through this incredible collaboration with DBA and RCA, was really humbling, and on a topic that really mattered. And, you know, like I said, back then it wasn't that, I mean, Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister, he was shutting hospital wards, he was trying to kind of dampen the problem. We felt we needed to get ahead of the problem and design out the problem in the first place. We had no idea COVID was coming. But, you know, the companies who are involved in that have now gone on to great success and developed their whole range of products off the back of that work. And it really just required someone to put all the pieces together to make it really quite transformational. So I'm so proud of that work, proud of the collaboration and the legacy that it created. It was really, really fun.
You even redesigned the appalling surgical gown, didn't you, that everyone has to wear, but they didn't take that bit up. Am I right that you did some work on the gowns? So
I think the gowns work was after, but I think that I mean, the commode was my favourite one. I think Duchamp put a commode in a gallery, and we managed to get our commode in the Design Museum as part of their exhibition.
Right.
It was stuff that wasn't sexy, frankly, but that would, you know, make a difference to how people live their lives. And if you've ever been dragged backwards through a hospital on a porter's chair, you will know that there are some things in life where dignity and human, you know, experience really matters, and when you're at your most vulnerable. And we were able to go in and make a difference there. And you know, when you see the NHS now in the context of the hard work they're doing, even just making their life fractionally easier by applying good design has got to be a good thing. Yeah,
no, magnificent. So now you have a new job, very different job, I imagine. How's it going?
It's amazing. I mean, I felt that, you know, 6 years in policy, it was right to turn the telescope round, look at it from the other end. What's it like to be at the delivery end, at the front line of public service delivery? I think I said at the start, you know, my fascination is looking at design from the smallest to the whole system and back again. And I feel that this role enables me to do that, working with adults who are vulnerable, who have care needs, and also understanding the ageing population and how we're going to think to the future.
Oh, we lost you there. I do hope Andrea's power hasn't run out. Well, we're nearly up on the hour, but let's hope Andrea can rejoin us for the final couple of minutes. And I also hope you've enjoyed just chatting with her as much as I have. I think Andrea is an incredibly inspirational person, and I love her ability to think big and think down in the detail as well. And I hope that's given you an insight. I fear we may have lost Andrea, but at least it was only right at the end. We'll give her a few more seconds in case she can join. No, I think we've lost her. Never mind. No, yes, completely gone this time. Okay, well, look, that's so sad, but we nearly got to the end, and I really hope you've enjoyed everything you've heard. The one question we've had is about the leaving party. I expect that's from a student, so we'll ignore that. And, oh, she's coming back. Let's see if we can get her back on just before battery died. There you go. Hopefully. Oh no, she's maybe disappeared again. Let's have a look. Okay, let's wait and see. I think she's back again. Well, while she's coming and going, we'll just continue there. As I was saying, this has been the end of an amazing period of time. I do encourage you to go onto the website and look at the student work. They have had an unbelievable time this year, as you can imagine. Their ambition, phone won't restart. Well, I keep talking until Andrea joins us again, just for a few final minutes. But as you can imagine, their life, you know, their ambition, their hopes for a beautiful convocation in the Albert Hall. This would have happened round about now, and they would all be saying goodbye physically. And of course, that was completely changed. And as I said at the beginning, their resilience and their, frankly, guile, which is a word Andrea taught me to use, has been incredible. Now, this is the last event of the Festival of Better Ideas, and every single one will be available online. You have the website there, rcaservicedesign.com. If you look at the events pages and you click actually on the event, you will see at the bottom of the page is a link to the video recording. And as Francesca mentioned earlier on, we're going to put every single one of these up on YouTube channel for you to look at. Our website will be there forever. It is an archive of every project that goes through the course, certainly the second year and hopefully the first year soon as well. Hey, there you are. Just in time. I was going to ask you one more question, if you don't mind, and maybe you can make some passing comments. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm here.
You are, well done. So it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. I think you are inspirational. I love all the wisdom and everything you've shared with us. It has been a crazy time of change. Last week we had, in fact it was last Thursday, we had Gillian Thompson talking about Black Lives Matter. We had John Thackeray talking about localization and sustainability. And we had Noel Hatch from Camden talking about the changes in communities and renewal and regrowth. When I asked them, do we think anything's going to change? John Thackeray said, don't know. How can we know? Noel said, we need to design the change. And Julian Thompson said, it's got to change, which I thought were three great answers, actually. So I'm going to ask you, do you think as we come out of this amazing time where some of it has obviously been awful and some of it has been strangely uplifting, actually, sense of community, even the intimate relationships I now have with 140 students via Zoom, probably much more intimate than I would have had without it. What do you think is going to change? What's going to happen? I'm not asking you for predictions, but I'd love your thoughts.
It's a great question. I mean, I think we tend to think as change as being quite linear, and that we tend to think of progress that the future is going to be better than the past. And I think one of the things that the late stage of capitalism will teach us is that capitalism has to come to terms with its own contradictions. So I think that change is both necessary and also the role of the designer in helping people find a path to a better future is more needed than ever. I personally, my big passion right now is about moving beyond sustainability to what does restorative public services or a restorative economy look like. I think that we're seeing the seeds of the emergence of a new economic world order in terms of how we think about the economics of change. And design is so crucial to that. Design helps us really think about the future in a way that's very positive and optimistic. And one of the things you get very involved with when you're thinking about policy is thinking about the future. And I think that we need those imaginative skills about dreaming the future that we want if we're ever to make it. So the core value of design is really to be able to imagine and then make it happen. And so for me, I think that change is, it's nothing new. We've had it for centuries. The pace of change might feel a bit intense right now, but I think it's overdue. And I think the positive consequences that will come from that will be a rethinking of how we travel, how we live, how we socialize, and how we work. And for me, as someone who, all design works within constraints, right? So you get a client brief and it's a constraint. All of policy works as trade-offs and these constraints. So for me, the thing that COVID has taught us is that those rules and those constraints are much more malleable than we probably thought they would otherwise be. And that is so much potential, therefore, for our ingenuity, creativity, and curiosity. So I'm super excited about where the future will go because, there's a lot more to play for, and I think the world needs design more than ever.
I totally agree, and I'll be briefing the first years tomorrow on their second year project on renewal and acceleration. So I think it's there for us to design, isn't it? And when we designed it, then deliver it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the hard part, and that's where design gets super interesting, because design at the beginning is all quite similar, but design, when it comes to delivery, is so, you know, the difference between a graphic designer, service designer, car designer, it's all so different. So that's really where it gets interesting.
Well, listen, I didn't want to keep you much more than an hour, and now you've stopped fluffing around with your dead battery.
Yeah, you missed the cuckoo. The cuckoo actually came in the gap between the...
We were looking forward to that. I'd love just to thank you so much for talking to us, Andrew. Just, you know, anything you want to say to us, any advice to the students, and all the grown-ups who are on the call as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think my biggest take away from this, it's never about an individual. It's always about working together. I've learned so much from you, Clive, over the years. It's been fantastic to work with you. You gave me a big break coming to London, and you gave me the space to be the best person, the best designer I could be. So I think that, you know, we have to work together as a community. And when we do that, I think we bring out the best in design. So I would suggest to anyone who's on the call, really, be generous. Be generous with sharing your ideas, be generous with sharing your practice, and be generous with collaborating on the things that you care about with other people who also care about it. And I think when we do that, when we apply generosity, spirit to design, we can achieve very magical things. And, you know, I haven't lost that spirit that I saw in David Carter's eyes, which was so inspiring, was that when I was 15, that I still have today. And it gave him the most incredible career. And I really feel blessed to have been given the social problems and the space to work in that I have. You have to build the field as you go along. You have to kind of, no one will give you amazing client briefs, and no one will give you difficult problems. You have to kind of heat seek them out. But when you do that, you have to do it as a team. I think that's my big takeaway. It's never about the individual. It's all about working as a collective.
Thank you, Andrea. I hope you'll come and work with us again at the RCA.
Yeah.
And carry on inspiring our students.
Yeah, love to.
That would be great. Good luck with everything you're doing now. It's been so enjoyable talking to you. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you very much. Normally I get everyone to come off Zoom and give a round of applause, but because it's a webinar, I'm not sure I can do that. So I'm going to give you a round of applause.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks also to everyone. Thanks for everyone for coming, and I hope it's been interesting.
Well, and this will be up, and we'll be feeding it to all our students all summer long to watch. Anyway, thanks a lot. Have a lovely rest of the week and weekend, and summer. And thanks for closing off our amazing Festival of Better Ideas. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for being
it's absolute pleasure. A fantastic idea, and I genuinely hope you do it again next year. I will be part of your audience.
All right.
Have a good summer.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I know some of you have been through the whole series. Amazing. We love you. And we'll do it again, and we'll speak to you soon. Have brilliant summers. That's it from us. We're signing off. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers, Andrew.
Cheers.